evening's agenda is mostly concerned with finance, but there is a couple of policy issues to consider. With regard to all the councillors present on Zoom, and I would like to thank Deputy Town Clerk Matt Snowden for clerking this meeting. I would also like to express an invitation to you all to thank our Town Clerk for being present this evening. She has had some family issues that she's been dealing with, and we do thank her for appearing this evening and helping us with this committee, and also Administrator Libby Woodhouse as well, who will be Assistant Clerk. If we could remain on mute, please, while the business is taking place, just unmute yourself when you wish to speak. As usual, please indicate clearly when we are voting so that we make sure the numbers add up. Thank you. Any apologies for absence this evening, Deputy Town Clerk?
I don't know if you can see or hear me because things are happening whilst we're trying to get it live streaming. The only apology for absence is Councillor Pinder.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest by any member of the council in respect of the agenda items listed below? No, excellent. And are there any dispensations? No, lots of head shaking. Thank you very much. Minutes of the Policy and Finance meeting held on the 2nd of September 2020. I'd like to thank the clerk for these excellent minutes. I'm more than happy with them. Does anybody have any comments with regard to the minutes of that meeting? Okay, can we approve the minutes of the meeting? Can I have a proposer? Councillor P. Astell, and a seconder, Councillor Jack. Can we all vote, please, to accept the minutes? That's carried. Thank you very much. An abstention from Councillor Willis, who was not actually present at that meeting.
That's right.
Are there any matters arising? There's only one comment that I would make. We discussed the adoption of a fraud and corruption policy, but that will come to the next policy meeting. Apart from that, I don't think there are any matters arising from those minutes. Thank you. Payments. To review and approve the payments that have been made and are to be made. Note that we voted that the Town Clerk is from now on to pay all reasonably anticipated and budgeted operational expenses without having to seek prior permission from the Council, and that the payments of such items are to be detailed in the financial reports. Are we all happy that that list of items that have been made would be as expected? Yeah, thank you. Do we need to vote on that, Deputy Town Clerk, or do we vote on the whole of the agenda item?
If you would like to vote on the payments on item A.
Okay, so I'm happy to propose that those payments are all just and should be paid if they haven't been paid already. I propose, could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Healy. Can we vote to approve item 5A? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5B. This is rather more complicated. And the reason that it's rather more complicated is because the council, we voted, if you remember, to upgrade the finance system that the council are using. And the upgrade from the RBS Alpha system to the RBS Omega system was made midway through a quarter. Hence, there are rather a lot of bracketed items, but some of those bracketed items are reverse journal items, and I actually have them all identified here if you wish me to go through them all. Along with the reverse journal items are some items which have been voted on to be carried out by the council. For example, there are some items which have not been budgeted for, but which the council have agreed that they should be budgeted for. They are also in brackets. If I'd like to mention one of the items, line number 4230, the tidy grant expenditure, was external funding, so not part of the precepted budget, so that is bracketed. I would hope moving forward, and I'm sure you will agree, Deputy Town Clerk, that these bracketed items will eventually all disappear by the end of the year. I will note that that some of them are items that should have been paid for last year, and so far the bills have not been received. Again, when the bills come in, they will be paid for out of last year's budget, so they will disappear off the list. Councillor Hopkins.
Sorry, Chair, you just mentioned an item that was outside funding that wasn't in the precept, but I'm confused. The code 4230, did you say? I've got that as skate park. Sorry, I don't know if I'm looking in the wrong.
Sorry. Oh yes. Yes, it's actually the tidy grant expenditure 4232. I apologise.
Right. Oh, okay. No, thank you. I just wasn't sure which one.
However, you have got a point with 4230 in that the skate park was not budgeted for and taken from reserves. That's why that is in brackets. So eventually, I would hope that by next quarter, all the brackets would disappear. Yes, Deputy Town Clerk.
If I could add, as you've seen, the brackets mean different things on different lines, and part of the reverse journal was that as we were moving from one from Alpha to Omega, there were some items that were put in twice, and then one is removed as we're doing the crossover. So that's why they're highlighted. They may still be there for this quarter, for the next quarter, because it's part of the history of this financial year. But by the next financial year, those items won't be there as reverse charges, but there may still be some things, as the chair said, there are some items that we budget for in one year, but the invoices don't come in till the following year, so the money has to be carried across from one year to the next year, even though it's not part of that year's budget. So there will still be some brackets, but it will pare them down a lot in the future. And as we get more familiar with it, all of us collectively we'll be able to get through it quicker. But hopefully the list that we've put together just explains all those issues.
Thank you. And is it fair to say that the new system is making tracking of funding much easier than just using a cash-based system? So there's much more visibility as to where our money is actually going and how much we're spending. As you can see, we are only 42.5% of our budget, despite the fact that there has been some extra expenditure that we hadn't budgeted for. So we are under budget for the year. Could I have a proposer for these? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hopkins.
Sorry, I just wanted to double check. Obviously, we probably expect this year to be under budget overall, given our events. I just wondered if we knew a general idea at this point about how much we expect to be under budget at the end of the year, if we've got a general ballpark for that.
Deputy Town Clerk, would you like to comment?
I would suggest that if I get anything wrong with this, the town clerk could comment as well. Part of our festivals are run through the income from the festivals that they make, so some of them won't be over or under budget because they haven't happened, so the income hasn't come in. But I'm sure Helen would be able to provide a better answer on that one.
Yeah, I'm just looking down the list actually to see, because I think for the food festival, obviously the money that came in for it paid for it basically. So same with the other food festival, and you know, like sometimes the pancake race and things like that. So basically, it doesn't make a difference to that type of expenditure. Obviously, we have had some expenditure that we've had some income that we weren't expecting to get in. And at the moment, I know we're working through to look at how some of that will be spent, because we need some more technology in some respects as well. And that there may be other things from the live streaming we need to do. So, I mean, that's what we're looking into at the moment. We'll have more idea really towards, you know, just after Christmas, really, I'd say, when we've done another quarter, to see where we are, because it's a bit too early to say. And I think our world at the moment is all a bit undetermined, isn't it? And so then we'll know really. But as I say, like Matt was completely right on the events, in the fact that what comes in pays for it. So obviously nothing's happened, so no money's coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Hopkins? Yeah, excellent. Could we have a proposer for our account code report? I'm more than happy to propose it. A seconder, Councillor Jack. Could we vote on that, please? Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. That's carried. To review the bank balances, we now have a quarterly balance comparison sheet, which gives us an idea of where we are with regard to our funding. That will continue for the whole of the year, which I think will help us when it comes to budgeting for next year. As you know, as part of the Yorkshire audit recommendations, we agreed that we would ask two non-signatories, who are Councillor Tucker and Councillor Hopkins, to go into the office to check the bank balances and reconcile them against reports. And hopefully they will be able to do that very soon. Deputy Town Clerk.
Yeah, if I liaise with those councillors, we'll get all the documents ready. So hopefully before the end of the week, you may be able to pop in when I drop you the email to say it's all there for you to sign. And the same with signatories regarding the payments as well. We'll be preparing the checks because of the current situation. We're doing checks rather than electronic. So I'll liaise with the signatories, etc. tomorrow. We'll get that sorted.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we need a proposer and a seconder for this, Matt?
I mean, I might be wrong, Helen, but it's just a matter of accepting it because it's.
No. You're on mute, Helen. Helen, Town Clerk, you're on mute. That's better.
Right. Yeah, a proposer and a seconder to accept the bank balances as they stand. Yeah.
I'm happy to propose. Councillor Horsley will second. Can we vote on that, please? Yeah, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So I mentioned that we were going to just consider one piece of policy this evening, and that's with regard to a virtual public meetings policy and procedure. This has been put together from a whole raft of different councils' experience with regard to using remote meetings. And I'd like to ask the Deputy Town Clerk just to take us through this.
Thank you. I went through to look at the councils because this is a relatively new policy for councils to have. They seem to have roughly the same thing, but sometimes a couple of changes depending on their circumstances. So what's here, I think, sets us up both now and the future regarding the policy and procedure. Some of it is the basics of the point of why this is in place. what our chosen 4M platform is, and how we actually communicate with the public through it, and how the meetings are set up, access to agenda, etc. Because we've got to make sure that it is accessible to the public still. Hence, this meeting through YouTube, which will be the way all future meetings are held. We as a council are on Zoom, the public view it through YouTube. If a member of the public wants to speak in the public forum, they'll be given the details of Zoom to join us, because that's the only way there can be we can hear someone else. It can be two-way communication. But as it stands, this means that anybody in the world can access us without having to go on Zoom, without having to get the password, the login, etc. And it's what other councils do. There's also bits in here about the general etiquette of the meetings, because whilst they're still meetings, the etiquette is slightly different because we're all on cameras. And taking into consideration some of the things that we've had issues with in the past, on page 4 in item 10, just the basics about speaking when on mute, having your mute on if needed. I think point 10E is quite important, regarding interference in the room, other people, pets, etc. Other councils have had issues of people eating their meals, other noises getting in the way. These are still meetings that the public are viewing. Also, the idea of confidential business on page 5, item 13. When we do go into closed for specific items, the Zoom broadcast won't be on YouTube, but as councillors and members of staff at home, we also have to make sure that there's hopefully possibly potentially nobody with us as well, because it is still a confidential matter, especially if it's something regarding staff or business sensitivity, and a lot of that is down to the trust. But I think it's something that we may not have all fully realised when we first started this, that even though it may be close to the public via YouTube, you're still in your own homes, still got to take this into consideration. I added a bit about turning off devices like Alexa, because I have Alexa, and every now and again it does something completely unplanned for, and so it's just to cover up, basically to cover ourselves throughout it. So I personally, I think the policy is quite concise. It looks towards the future as well. In the bit about voting, it states about a raise of hands, but I know there is through Councillor Estelle talking about it in the past, there is a way to do digital polling via Zoom, which I've still got to look into, but it's mentioned in there that we would move on to that as and when. So it covers any potential developments. And then from the resolution at the very end of it, item 20 on page 6, towards the end, it was agreed by councillors at the previous meeting that these meetings wouldn't necessarily be there for rebroadcast or for people to upload. They're downloaded by the town council for use of verifying minutes if needed, although the primary source for taking minutes is still the meeting itself, which is one of the reasons Libby's here today to take the minutes, because this is the prime source. The recording is a backup if needed. But they're not there for public consumption where councils are concerned manipulation, etc. But we are giving people their legal rights to view the meetings as they're proceeding. So if councillors want any changes to the policy that can be discussed tonight, or if not, if they're happy with it, it can be recommended to full council next week for final signing and ratification.
Thank you. Councillor Healy.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And can I just say congratulations on getting this set up. I can confirm, I've just actually gone onto the YouTube channel, and I can confirm indeed that this is being broadcast live. And I can also confirm that there is one member of the public watching. And I would like to say to that member of the public, thank you for joining us and for your consideration. I'm glad you're so. Please.
I think that, Councillor, I think that member of the public's me.
Is that you?
So
Oh,
I've got to go away the computer to make sure it's working. No
members of the public.
But we have had 2 or 3 at different points, so I can also monitor that.
It seems to be that we've got members of the public who are on it, which is great, whether it's you or somebody else. I should welcome them all. But I do think that this is a real step forward, because, as you said, it does mean that that people can access this from a much wider sphere. And as far as East Riding of Yorkshire Council is concerned, I think it's been something of a revelation. And I spoke on this in a full council meeting last week on planning. I mean, the government are going to basically they have proposals to change the planning so that it's taken away from local authorities and taken to Whitehall. And just at the point where many people are sort of realising the democratisation of planning, it seems to be being taken away. And the number of people who are viewing planning meetings and East Riding is amazing, hundreds. And people are talking to me about it, saying, actually, we didn't realise that councillors did this, and how positive they were about it. And I think that if, you know, Beverley Town Council can get to the same point really with these YouTube live streams, and it's not just the live streaming, of course, it's the fact that you can go and look at it subsequently. That's the point about it, because I mean, you know, many people can't look at planning meetings during the day, but I know there's been a particular planning application in Leconfield, and the number of people who've sort of commented on that, members of the public, because it's been there and they've been able to go back and look at it. So I'm hoping that some of our own meetings, like the PPS, where we're dealing with planning applications, will be similarly transparent. So I want to just congratulate the team, all of you, for doing this. We suggested it last time. It's got to go to full council, but this does look like a sort of trial this evening, and it does appear to be working, and well done. Thank you.
Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Chair. I think for me, although obviously the Deputy Town Clerk made a point about using these primarily as a backup in the case of needing it for the notes, I actually think Dennis's point about it being helpful for members of the public to maybe watch something back, perhaps because they can't see a meeting live, would be quite useful. I'd be happy for us to amend that. I had a note earlier about where I thought it would change. I think sorry, but I just an amendment to the current setup to say that we would make it available to members of the public afterwards on YouTube on the town council's. I think that would be a positive development for, you know, for members of the public to be able to watch it back and have a look at what had happened. The other thing I was going to say was on the point 4C, when it's talking about access to agendas and supporting documents, and it says the YouTube link to view the meetings would be on the town council website. If possible, it would be good if we could notify the start of the meeting on our social media channels. So on Facebook, if we've now managed to get it up and running, and on the Twitter account we have, just as an easier way to remind any members of the public that might be interested that they can access us.
Thank you, Councillor Hotsmith. Any other comments? Yes, Matt.
Yeah, regarding the uploading of videos of minutes, I think it was resolved at full council when discussing this that I think the resolution was to not upload them. So unless that was rescinded, or we wait, or 6 months elapsed between, we couldn't change that. It may be something for the future as we get into grips with the technology, and things like how is the best way to present them? Should they be edited in terms of having just a front sheet on each video saying the name of the meeting and the date to enhance accessibility? But it's something that councils may want to discuss in the future, but it's something we couldn't do straight away because the resolution from a few weeks ago has already been made.
Town Clerk.
I think as well on that one, Matt, we'd need to check the accessibility, wouldn't we, with the website, with the new website, because you'd have to have a sign with the compatibility notice with it, wouldn't it?
I think
Is it
we wouldn't host it. That we'd just direct people to the YouTube channel. They'd be hosted on the YouTube channel, and then that's YouTube's responsibility regarding accessibility.
Yeah, because I remember Aubergine said something about if you were putting it from there, it needed to have another explanation with it, wasn't it?
Any other comments? So my proposal would be with a couple of amendments suggested by Councillor Hopkins. If Matt could make those, then this should be forwarded to full council for ratification at full council. Matt?
Yes, to full council Hopkins, item 20 on page 6, 20B. I could have something at the end of that B, something unless the council decides to do so, something like that. So again, it covers the fact that this policy says it's not, because that was based on the resolution that was made at the previous meeting. But that would mean that the policy wouldn't necessarily have to come back to be reviewed if the resolution is reviewed in the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds ideal. So that one, and then the points I made about 4C about them using social media channels to advertise it as well, if possible. That's brilliant.
Okay, any of the comments? Are we all happy with those suggestions and those amendments, and that this policy should go forward to full council for ratification? I don't think we need to vote on it now, do we? We'll just send it forward. Okay, thank you. Item 7C, Town Council grants. Councillor Horsley.
On mute, David.
We've been looking at the grants setup, and basically we seem to be agreed on the grants committee that we should provide an introduction to make clear to anybody who's applying that the grants will be awarded mainly in 3 separate layers, you might say. The first would be genuinely small grants to organisations that don't necessarily have a proper setup yet, and would be limited to £500, and would still need to have evidence that they were going to be for the benefit of Beverley people and that they were going to be properly administered. But such evidence would not need to be as strong as for the other 2 levels of grant. The second level would be a grant of up to £2,000, and this would require clearer evidence as to exactly how they were going to benefit Beverley people, that the body applying had made a reasonable assessment as to how it would affect Beverley people, and that the body already was being run in a proper manner with budgets and end of year accounts. The third level would also involve that, but would be intended for organisations with which we hoped to have a long-term relationship. So we would propose giving them £2,000 per year, initially for 3 years, but renewable. That would be reviewed every year, because of course, if the council, if a body failed to carry out what it said it was going to do, we wouldn't give it the grant the following year. But we would, on the whole, assume that they were going to achieve their objectives within reasonable limits, and therefore we would move on that basis. So we'll be putting proposals of that kind in detail to I think the next policy meeting. That okay?
That's fantastic. I think Matt has done a great job with that. That encapsulated about 2 hours of discussion in a very simple diagram. So thank you for that, Matt. I think the grants committee also needs to work on the application forms and how they would be and how the grants would actually be applied for as well. So, Councillor Willis, you're muted, Anne. Anne, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm unmuting. I have to apply for a grant. I applied for a grant for Bransham Food Bank from the ward funds of Hull City Council, and the form's relatively simple. I haven't got a copy at the moment, but I have to say what we're going to spend the money on, and then at the end of the year I have to say what we have spent it on, and sometimes that's different because sometimes circumstances have changed. But it's a fairly simple form to do. It might be worth the grants people getting a look at it.
Councillor Horsley?
Can mute me again.
Thank you. I'd be very happy to receive that or any other information which might help us in setting up our own application system.
I'll ask them for a copy because I need a copy because I've got to apply for next year. They promised me a grant. They promised me the money next year. I still have to fill in all the forms.
So are we happy to send this back to grants to work on, and then they will bring it back to policy at some future date? Yep. All happy? Fantastic. Lots of nods. That's wonderful. Item 8, agenda item 8. I apologise I was not able to come to the CCLA meeting, but I appreciate many of you were able to come. I hope the discussions that you had with CCLA were enlightening and interesting and gave you confidence in this company. We did promise our electors that we would look to invest some of our money. I think the local authority property fund, this is only my view, is perhaps a step too far for us at the moment. But I did think the public sector deposit fund, which looks as safe as houses, shall we say, would be something that we should consider. Now, I have had a couple of comments from a couple of councillors who have said that that perhaps we should be getting more return for our money, but at the moment we're not getting any return from our money at all, and therefore we need to look at investing. But we also need to be mindful, though, of the fact that we are in uncharted territory with the current pandemic. Yes, you might make a lot of money, for example, if you wanted to invest in American tech such as Zoom, but it's not safe, and I wouldn't want to be investing money that's entrusted to us by the public in something as risky as that. So I did think the public sector deposit fund was of interest, and that we should perhaps consider perhaps investing some of our reserve fund into this particular fund. I would love to hear any comments that anyone has with regard to their thoughts on this. Councillor Hopkin, thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good presentation that we received. I would say that I share your reservations about the property fund at the moment, because although CCLA seem to think that their property is going to do well, I think it's too early to say what will happen in kind of inner city property. And although they suggest that potentially it could either be continuing as offices or perhaps converted into residential, there's a suggestion that if more things seem to be virtual, or there's more remote working going on, that both residential and office things may be moving out of the centre of cities. And so I'm just a little bit hesitant right now for us to say that we want to go for the property fund when it is so uncertain what the next, what the next few years are going to bring in terms of how cities develop. Because again, although they've got some of the things like the science park, that I think, you can pretty solidly say that they'll still be getting a decent return from, and so on. It's very difficult with some of the central offices, where the kind of plan that they seem to follow at the moment is where those offices are no longer viable, they can sell it on as a potential residential conversion. It's difficult to say how those aspects are going to go, although of course they have outperformed others. So I think I'd share your thoughts, Linda, about saying that the property fund is probably not for us for now.
Thank you, Chloe. Any other comments? Councillor Healy.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think the public sector deposit fund is perfectly adequate for what we need. It is giving a nominal interest rate, which was it 2% or something of that order, yeah. which is pretty exceptionally good at the moment, considering the NSNI, National Savings and Investments, have given notice that they're reducing their interest rates from 1.14 to 0.14. And in fact, the talk this morning is of negative interest rates. So you pay them to keep your money. So I think it seems a fairly, they've clearly got a lot of experience. They're holding a lot of funds for local authorities. And I would agree that the deposit fund is a better option for us. I think the question really is, how much do we put in there? That's the next question, because currently got £680,000 in the current account. Do we? I mean, do we sort of have we need obviously to keep a kind of working capital in there. The other thing is that it seemed that the instant access is quite good. Yeah. Well, I think you have to deposit 25,000 as a minimum to start with, she was saying, wasn't it? But then subsequently there's no limit. So we need to just decide, what we're going to deposit. We can clearly access it very quickly. And I think we need the RFO to probably tell us what she feels is a working capital amount to keep in the current account, so that we can then take a view on how much we recommend investing in the deposit fund.
Helen?
Can I ask a question, because I wasn't at the presentation, but is it the same amount as in banks that is guaranteed by CCLA? Because I know they've got about 30 different organisations that they invest in, but is it still that?
It's not. It doesn't fall within the financial industry compensation scheme, so it doesn't fall within that at all, because these are investments.
Yeah.
In different companies, so it doesn't fall within the financial services compensation scheme of £85,000. But we did ask that question of them, and there would need to be a catastrophic failure of the whole European banking system for that money to disappear. So and local authorities have got hundreds of thousands of pounds invested with them. So I don't think, although I did have that concern as well, if you're investing in companies and in markets like this, it's not a high street bank fund, so that rule wouldn't apply. So I think we can invest with impunity, really.
Councillor Abdel.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I thought the presentation from Kelly at CCLA was a good one, and I'll run with what Chloe has said. I do think that the property fund at the moment is no good for us. I think that the fund which we're talking about is more in line with what we're on about. It's easy access, and if we're looking for a figure to deposit with them, I would propose 75,000.
Well, yeah, I think, Pete, it's a question of what is an appropriate figure, and that may well be the right figure, but we've got 800,000 in a current account. I was thinking probably a bit more than that, but I think we need to be advised by Helen on what kind of working capital is necessary.
Chair, bearing in mind, we are looking for property. I'm more than happy to up that and include the property price, so long as we can get our hands on the money should we need it to purchase some property. I understand that it's and I'm looking at Duncan. He was listening with interest. I think you'll pass comment, Duncan. Is it a 3 months release?
No, it's instant, Pete. It's instant. It's like pay.
Yeah.
Like we asked him that question, and it's instant.
Yeah. Right. Okay then. Yeah. Fine.
Councillor Horsley. I've had Councillor Horsley, then Councillor Hopkins, then Councillor Jack. Unless Councillor Jack, that was something you wanted to say with it in reply to Pete's comment. You're muted, Duncan.
Yeah. The other thing was that was also, I just wanted to be clear on the transaction charge of what was the charge for each in and out of the thing, or did they say there was no transaction charge? I wasn't quite clear on that.
I didn't think there was one.
I didn't think there was one on this particular fund, but that is well worth checking. Good point, Duncan. Can we check that, please, Helen? Councillor Horsley.
It seems to me that it would make good sense to put probably 400,000 into this fund. That is about half. Certainly what would remain in our accounts would be more than adequate for anything that we would foresee in the immediate future. And as we say, if we did want to go for a property, we could regain the rest in order to be able to do that if we needed to.
Linda, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah, sorry. I'm being good, you see. Thank you, Councillor Horsley. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, as my understanding was, it was the property fund that would require some notification of withdrawal of funds, but that the public sector deposit fund would actually allow us instant access. So I think in that case, that means that anything that we want as a deposit for a building can go into the public sector deposit fund, because we could withdraw it very quickly if needed. I just wanted, I'm afraid my internet cut out, so I missed, but you, Chair, had asked, or perhaps somebody else had asked the clerk if there was a working capital that we needed in the current account. And I'm afraid I missed the answer, so I just wondered if you could repeat that one for me. Sorry.
There wasn't an answer.
There wasn't an answer, but
No.
Under the operating reserves are £200,000. So we already have operating reserves. If you look in your pack on page 1 of item 5B, you can see a whole list of our earmarked reserves, and you can see that line 330 is operating costs of £200,000, which is already, which I would hope, Helen, is adequate for. Is that for 6 months or a year or 18 months?
That's for a year. So that's because it's you know, around 9 months of the annual precept.
Okay. You'll also notice that we have 300.
So that would be for the year.
Sorry, Helen.
Yeah, so for the capital buildings, that was upped in the earmarked reserves. to 350,000.
Hmm.
I wasn't at the presentation, obviously, the other evening, but as I understand, it's instant access, as in it takes a day to get out. I would need to check the transaction charges.
Well,
because I'm not sure of that at the moment, but there is a list with of all the earmarked reserves that we've got with this information pack that we've got today. So depends really on what councillors want to put in. Obviously, we need to keep 200,000 for operating, and then if there's anything else that's unexpected, we want to keep.
So
Some more.
So even if you took £200,000 out of the £689,000, you'll still live with £489,000, which we could look at investing. My suggestion was going to be that we took the £350,000 that is reserved for capital buildings and put that in this fund. I don't know what anybody else thinks. Councillor Astel.
You're confusing me now, Chair. £350,000, is that included in the 600,000?
Yes.
Right. So I would move then, at least that we put in the full £350,000 with CCLA.
Hmm.
And that leaves us a working capital of 400,000. Hey?
Yeah, 349,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still plenty of money, isn't it? At least we'll be getting some return on investment, moving our money elsewhere, which is what we promised.
Yeah, but Chair, we that leaves us with sufficient in the bank account for. I mean, we've still got COVID, as we all know, and I would like to think that we could possibly do something extra in the community, whether it be extra lights, extra planters, extra, you know, I think we've got sufficient there in the bank account. And of course, we have to have £200,000. Is that correct, Ellen? Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Willis. You're muted, Anne.
If we put in the 350,000, we could always put more in the future. You know, that doesn't have to be the end of it, but at least we could do that for starters. And as you say, at least we were getting some return then.
Yeah. Any other comments?
The charges are all indicated. They have an annual management charge. They take from the fund automatically. And as a general principle, they're saying you've got £10,000 invested. We estimate it will cost you £101 in ongoing charges per year to invest. So it's about 1% in the fund, which they would expect to be in charges. So they've got 350,000. It's going to cost about 350 quid in cost, according to their website.
For a return of 2%. So.
Well, yeah, but the return is not. It's not guaranteed 2%. It depends on the performance of these companies that they're investing in. But there is still sort of market exposure here. It's not like you will get 2%. That's what they estimate, as indeed their costs are estimated and their interest rates are. The rate of return is estimated as well.
Duncan, sorry, I'll come to you in a minute. Duncan, you're muted, Duncan. Duncan, thank you.
1%, it'd be it'd be 3,500, wouldn't it?
That's 10%.
No. If it's 10,000, it would cost you £100. You knock the two noughts off.
Yeah.
So if it's 350,000 and you knock the two noughts off, it's 3,500.
Yeah.
Seems quite a lot.
That does seem quite a lot. Can we query that? Chloe.
Thank you. I think the idea of putting what we intend as a building amount in is a good idea. I think the suggestion that we could do 400,000 is not necessarily a bad idea. With some clarification over what it would cost in terms of the funds, because then if we did decide suddenly this year that we wanted to spend the 350,000, we'd still have some money in an interest account that the council had, which I think is still useful as a principle for the council, trying to do the best for the residents with the money that we have available.
Thank you. Councillor Tucker.
I think Duncan's right. 1% is a fairly significant sum of money, and I wonder how many other companies are out there operating. I don't know, who might be in a more competitive market if they, realise what we might be charged. I think the other thing to think about is often with companies like this, and I don't know if that's the same with this company. The more you put in, the charge should reduce. So, there may be something in the clause there that we can pick up on, but I think it's with 1%, that's a pretty hefty sum of money over a long period of time. It may be worth, before we jump, looking to see what other companies are out there doing similar things.
Chair.
Yes.
Chair, just to background for David. I mean, this CCLA, David, it's very, very familiar with senior authorities, town and parish councils. It's churches, charities and local authorities. And so they have Birmingham City Council 66 million invested. So it is a reputable organisation, David.
David, please come back.
I'm sure it is, Peter, and often companies like this who build up this sort of business do so because there's an element of complacency in organisations like ours who feel that, oh, well, they do a lot of business with other groups, so maybe we should do it with us. I'm sure there's a competitive market out there that we should look at.
So can I take it then that we are still discussing this? We are still not fully agreed on whether we should be investing with this company or not. We'll ask the town clerk to go back to see if there is a sliding scale of investment charges. Duncan.
One other thing, I wasn't sure that the percentage, when I think back about the presentation, I wasn't sure that the percentage that they offered wasn't after the management of, the management fee. So could we look and, they're saying they were getting 2% back after they've taken the 1% off. So if we could just check that as well, I'm not clear in my own head with that. So
I think a bit of confusion because there's a fact sheet which relates to the fund management fee. She's saying something completely different. It's actually saying 0.1%, currently reduced to 0.08%. It says the fund management fee includes the annual management charge and other costs and expenses of operating and administrating the fund. So if it's 0.1%, then it would be 350 quid, not 3,500 quid. But the example it's given somewhere else suggests it's higher than that. So I think what we need to do is to just get clarity, because if it is 0.1%, then that is a very different proposition to it being 1%, and it would not be competitive at 1%. But we just need to get our heads around the costings, and this fact sheet would suggest something a little bit different from it being 1%. So Helen or Matt could clarify that with them. I think that's probably the best thing, and we can then take a final decision on that, perhaps at full council.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. So we're looking at possibly, yes. Sorry,
Chloe's got her hand up.
Sorry, Chloe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. To be honest, I think at this point we've been running around the houses on the amount of money that we have in the current account, and we've suggested CCLA as one to invest in, I'd be happy with us making a recommendation to full council that we think of a figure that we think is investable, subject to further information about the fees that the accountant, that is there for operating the account, and that obviously subject to the approval of full council's decision. But I think unless we actually have in mind a specific alternative fund, if we say, oh, we'll go and have another look for alternatives, it feels like we're just going to drag on and on with something that we've been trying to resolve, taking this money out of all being in the current account. I'd rather we had a recommendation to full council about an amount and subject to approval of the management fees, than to say, and we're going to go and have another look for another alternative.
I quite agree, Councillor Hopkins. Those of us who've been on the council since 2019 will know that the clerk spent quite a lot of time looking for suitable accounts, suitable funds that we could deposit our money in, and after quite some diligent research, found CCLA and was able to recommend CCLA as a bona fide company. Again, I know them through my church. Councillor Astell knows them through talking to various other councils, and that yes, I think your suggestion is very sensible, Councillor Hopkins. So subject to the conditions that Councillor Hopkins has just identified, we would look to depositing £350,000 in the public sector deposit fund. Is that what we're agreeing? Am I getting lots of nods? Yeah, fantastic. So we could take that forward.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Seconded by
Councillor. The clarification on this costing thing, because if it's not 1%,
yes, absolutely,
it's not right. But I think it is more likely to be 0.1. We need to get that clarified. In which case, I would support that.
We do, absolutely. We need to clarify the investment charges. We need to clarify whether there are transaction charges, and also look at their latest return on investment to make sure we're doing the right thing. But at the moment, our money is just sat there doing nothing. So
yeah, might as well be.
Can I just ask who seconded that? I know Chloe Peter, was it?
Yes.
Thanks.
Hopkins proposed, Councillor Astell seconded. Yes, Town Clerk.
We've also got, because we did make a change in which we've got some money in the Beverley Building Society, which is in that's an investment where we do get some interest, a little bit.
Yes, and it's good to support our local building society too. So I think we put the maximum in there, didn't we? That we could. Yes, we did. So okay, so we've come to the end of our agenda items.
Linda, can I have a vote?
Oh, have we not had a vote? Please
No.
vote. Sorry, proposed by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Astell. Please vote on the proposal. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Councillor Astell. There are no listed any other business items. So the time is now 7:36 and I call this meeting to a close. Thank you.